The two greatest Sith Emperors, two sets of royal guards, but who comes out as the true strongest of them all? Greetings lore junkies, and welcome back to the archives. While many Sith empires have existed in the past, very few compared to the power and the might of the two accomplished by Darth Vitiate and Darth Sidious respectively. They were the mightiest emperors of Sith history, but while we often talk about their individual power and their own military strength, there was one area that we have not yet covered. Every emperor must be protected by their entourage of highly trained elite guards. Sith emperors are no different, and these two share an order of red-robed warriors that cultishly follow their lord's every whim. But while we're a bit more familiar with the deadly skill of Palpatine's royal guard, how do they measure up against their historical counterparts, Vitiate's own Imperial Guard? Well, my friends, in today's holocron, we will compare these seemingly identical protectors to see who is truly the best at defending their emperor. But unlike these two Sith Lords, our own archives are without guard. This leaves them open to being viewed by those who have not yet subscribed. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see more comparisons like it, force crush that subscribe button and comment down below what other factions you would like to see pitted against one another. Now my friends, let us begin. This video will be a pretty straightforward comparison, as we'll evaluate their equipment, training, skill, and the battlefield feats of each guard faction. And because they're more well known, we'll begin by analyzing Palpatine's royal guards first. Unlike Darth Vitiate, Palpatine did not choose to be publicly known as a Sith Lord. When the Galactic Empire took over, Sidious made it a point to maintain his public persona as Emperor Palpatine. His reasoning was that it would look badly with his public image to have one order of Force sensitives just replaced by another one that would appear identical to the first. He had spent a great deal of time and effort sowing fear and malcontent between the galactic citizens and the Jedi. That fear is what helped him to legally enact the mass arrest and genocide of their people. To out himself as a Force wielder in turn would look terrible and could spell a mass uprising. To that end, it was prudent that he kept his cover to all but a select few individuals. The reason we bring this up is because this is the crux behind why he had royal guards in the first place. If Palpatine's life were ever to be threatened, he could not defend himself without showing his true power. And Lord Vader was not always near him, of course. After all, it wasn't the apprentice's job to be his 24/7 bodyguard. Vader was an enforcer, and was usually out in the galaxy doing the Emperor's will. Not to mention, Palpatine needed guards near him that were totally loyal to him. Vader's loyalty was never guaranteed, but for individuals to hold Palpatine's life within their hands, they had to be sharp, quick, and more skilled than even the finest warriors that the galaxy had seen. More skilled than many Jedi. Luckily, there was a few templates that Palpatine had to work with. Templates for him to examine. The first, of course, was the Imperial Guards Vitiate had, which is the one we're comparing them with today. But the second, and the most prominent, were the guards of Sidious's own master, Darth Plagueis the Wise. During his life, Plagueis had a thrall of mercenaries under his employment known as the Sun Guards. They were warriors from the Thrysnian system that had origins of noble fighters, the species known as the Ichani. Eventually, the Sun Guards struck off on their own, forming a religious faction that had historical animosity towards the Mandalorians. They were a fierce group that served Plagueis with fanatic loyalty until the day that he died. It was the design of their helmets which inspired the look of Palpatine's own royal guards. In fact, their helmets were literally just red-colored versions of the helmets worn by the Sun Guard. Palpatine's life had actually been saved by the Sun Guards more than once, as they were all privy to the knowledge of the Sith. And so, likely as a tribute to them, Palpatine would design his own royal guards after them. We will be making a video on the Sun Guards and Plagueis' protectors in the future. But anyway, along with these helmets, they wore flowing robes that hid vibro swords, heavy blaster pistols, and repeating blaster rifles. But their main weapon was either the stun pike or the double-sided vibro blade. Being trained in these classic weapons ensured that they would be able to do battle with any kind of enemy, whether ranged or melee. And as we'll find out, Palpatine ensured that this would include Jedi Knights. He was well aware that Jedi or other Force sensitives may come after him, and he had to be sure that his guard was well equipped to handle any type of threat. To this end, he had them trained on the arid world of Yinchor, the original home planet of a dangerous reptilian species that once gave the Jedi a great deal of trouble. It was a harsh and a desolate place that was meant to cull the weak and to strengthen the strong. Initiates were harvested from a dozen of the Empire's top squads across their military branches. Being the best of the best was considered the bare minimum requirement for royal guard training. They were taught the deadly art of the Ichani warriors, a combat system which turned a person's body into a living weapon. They were then put into a pressure cooker known as the Squall. This was a platform battle arena suspended over a deep pit. Day and night, the trainees were drilled against one another, sometimes even to the death. These days were long, but some days were worse. There were days when Darth Vader would visit, selecting the student who was considered to be the finest of them all. He would then challenge them to a duel, murdering them in front of their classmates. All of this was to prove that even what they considered to be their very best was not good enough for the Emperor. Out of a typical class of either 30 or 40 trainees and initiates, only one would graduate and be allowed to join Palpatine's own personal entourage. And while they saw battle only very rarely, there were no other warriors like them in the galaxy. Despite most of them not being Force sensitive, they had the reflexes of a fully trained Jedi, displaying the capability to take on multiple armed enemies at a time, and famously, able to reflect blaster fire back with their vibro swords. A single royal guard, Kurkanos, was once able to take on an entire army by himself. He did this by joining the battle against a traitorous Imperial warlord, cutting down swarms of stormtroopers while dual-wielding his double-bladed vibro sword and a blaster pistol. During the fight, he bullseyed a TIE fighter pilot through his viewport mid-fight, sending the fighter crashing into the enemy ranks. After this, all of them retreated. Kurkanos was later identified by an older man who stated that the only two kinds of a being in the galaxy with that kind of skill were the Royal Guards and the Jedi Knights. They were indoctrinated in their very training to believe that Palpatine and his order were beyond fault or question. Their undying loyalty to him made them cast aside their own safety or their livelihood, and it was purposeful that they would go throughout training alongside a personal companion, but by the end of the training, they would have to duel their companion to the death in front of Palpatine himself. Proof of loyalty. If they refused, Vader would murder them both. It was this loyalty that made Vader both respect and dislike the Royal Guard. He appreciated that they would never betray the Emperor or his empire, and that they were willing to throw their lives aside for the greater good of the Sith. But he didn't like that they only answered to Sidious, never taking his orders unless the Emperor told them to do so. If Palpatine wished for them to attack Vader for any reason, which he did order them on a couple occasions, then they would do it without question and without hesitation. They did fear Vader, because their loyalty to Palpatine overrode that fear though. This made them especially difficult and dangerous enemies, particularly when they were in large groups and coordinated. And so, my friends, this is our analysis on Palpatine's own Royal Guards. But now it is time to match them up with the lesser known, the older guards that served Emperor Vitiate's empire. What if we ventured deep into the past, a dark past? Vitiate's Royal Guard went by many names, including the Sith Honor Guard and the Dark Honor Guard, but we'll just call them by their most common name, the Imperial Guard. Though they weren't just the Emperor's personal guards, they were the protectors of the Sith Sanctum, the headquarters of the old Sith Order, and the rest of the Imperial Citadel on Dromund Kaas, as well as the Sith Academy on Korriban. They share many similarities in their training that the old Royal Guard do, specifically how they are chosen from the ranks of the Imperial military. The only difference is that the military that they're being chosen from is a lot tougher than the Stormtrooper Corps. The Sith Troopers of the Old Republic were bred in a caste system for the express purpose of combat and warfare. Their training involved team combat scenarios that involved live rounds. This toughened them up beyond what was even possible among the Stormtroopers under Sidious's empire, and this is a big deal. The Imperial Guard usually lacked any degree of Force sensitivity, since most Force sensitives were funneled directly into the ranks of the Sith, though a few managed to slip past Vitiate's screening. One Royal Guard by the name of Zarvarat Tovar was found to possess some power in the Force later in life. In Palpatine's empire, Royal Guards were found to possess a measure of Force sensitivity, but if they had a lot, they were put into the elite Shadow Guard. However, in Vitiate's empire, life didn't really change for Force-sensitive Imperial Guards. They maintained their life in service to Vitiate, but were instead trained to become Sith Lords in their own right. It really depended on their own individual proficiency, but their staffs were not for stunning. They were engineered to kill in combat. And while we don't know their full loadout, the Old Republic Encyclopedia states that they had a myriad of weaponry designed to exterminate Force users. But what about their home? Rather than there being just one world for guardsmen to be trained, Vitiate hand-selected several, ensuring that they were potent with the dark side first. This was because anytime a guardsman passed their training, he would be brought before the Emperor and mentally linked to him. Vitiate would exert his power over their minds, binding their consciousness and wills to his own. This made them fanatically loyal and incapable of betraying him even. Selecting worlds strong in the dark side allowed Vitiate to form bonds with his future guardsmen more gradually. This made the process more complete. Just like the royal guards of Sidious's empire, candidates underwent a merciless training regimen that included regularly scheduled battles to the death. Their training was designed by the veterans of Vitiate's guard. The elder guardsmen would train and teach the younger group, who became too old to be useful in live combat or as the Emperor's protectors. They would be assigned to teach the newer generation. But Vitiate included a Sith flair to the process. The new recruits would eventually kill their teachers in their final exam. What we know about their training is a bit obscure, but the final product speaks for itself. They received intense training in martial arts so that they were more than a match for both Jedi and Sith alike. It wasn't a question whether one guard was able to take down a Jedi, it was something that they did on a regular basis in their timeline. But it wasn't just Jedi that they were training to take out. The Imperial Guard had to train to take out Sith as well. Every now and then, a punk Sith Lord would question the Emperor's will, and they needed to be dealt with hastily. In the lore, we can speak to a guard by the name of Lassakar. It is known that he personally executed 6 different Jedi and over 24 Sith Lords by the end of his career. The Sith of Vitiate's empire feared his Imperial Guard so much that many decided not to fight them at all if the Emperor ordered their execution. Instead, the Sith marked for death chose to lay down their lightsaber and surrender to the killing blow of the guard's electro staff. Their regular murder of Sith Lords would even extend to the Dark Council. Even the Dark Lords of the ruling council feared the Emperor's guards, though they would never admit it. None of them had any authority or insight into the guards' activities, and so they had to move around them extremely cautiously. It may seem odd to the point of incredulous that non-Force sensitives could ever get dangerous enough to pose imminent threat to the strongest Sith of an entire ancient empire. But the truth is, there's something deeper, more sinister going on here. Vitiate shared a power bond with his guards. They got stronger whenever they were in close proximity to him, and the guards could draw upon the Force to strengthen themselves. Their reputation and ability to kill fully fledged Dark Lords of the Sith is not mere talk, but it goes back several hundred years. At one point, a few council members conspired against their emperor, and once Vitiate had the traitors dealt with, he dispatched his Imperial Guards to hunt down and eradicate every member of the Dark Council. His reasoning? He wanted to start over with a fresh new set. So far, among the few Force sensitives to make it past the Imperial Guards, the most notable is the redeemed Revan, who by that point had command over both light and dark. I think when measuring these two against one another, the winner is overwhelmingly clear. Palpatine's royal guards were tough beyond belief for their day, and it is a feat well known on its own to be considered equal to a Jedi. But Vitiate's Imperial Guards totally blow them out of the water. While the Royal Guards were speculated to at least be on par with Jedi Knights, the Imperial Guards regularly slaughtered Jedi Masters and Dark Lords of the Sith that sat upon the Dark Council. There really is no comparison here. But what do you think, my friends? Did you expect for Vitiate's Guard to be so extremely powerful? We certainly didn't. Did you anticipate that Palpatine's guard would lose in such finality? Unsurprisingly, yet again, the power of Darth Vitiate is extremely terrifying here. Throughout the lore, both in Legends and canon, there has been 4 distinct orders of crimson-wearing Imperial protectors: Vitiate's Sith Imperial Guard, Palpatine's Royal Guard, Snoke's Praetorian Guard, and the Fel Imperial Knights. And of all of them, the Imperial Guards might just be the most powerful. But let me know if you'd like to see any more comparison videos. Anyway, my friends, fellow lore junkies, thank you so much for visiting us here at the Archives here today. Stay tuned for more daily Star Wars lore, and have a great one.